Army Sergeant Crystal Crawford. The time is now 3:16, and I'm in studio with PFC Joe Alaman and also Mr. Frank Fisher, as promised, from the Area 1 Public Affairs Office, and he's here to tell us about the Area 1 transformation. Mr. Fisher, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Joe, how you feeling?
I'm always phenomenal, you know me.
All right.
Just be glad to be back on the air.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Fisher, you're here to tell us what exactly is What's the Word. So, for those who don't know, what is What's the Word, sir?
Well, thank you. What's the Word is a relatively new broadcast, a radio broadcast that has been put together in partnership between AFN Casey Radio and the Area 1 Public Affairs Office. And the purpose of it is to give the members of the Area 1 community one more avenue or channel for being kept up to date on matters relating to the transformation of Area 1, giving them facts, giving them practical guidance, the most recent official information about how the transformation of Area 1 is going to affect them.
Absolutely. And how did this idea come about?
Well, I have had a relationship with AFN Casey for about 2 years, doing something called the North Country Journal.
Okay.
I've worked very closely with PFC Alaman on that. And the North Country Journal is a 2-minute broadcast. It's a short essay, and each North Country Journal topic is about either the culture or history of the host nation, Korea, yes, or about things that would be interesting to our mainly soldier audience here in Area 1. And at around the time that we were doing that, it occurred to us that it might be good to have a program, a separate program, a full 1-hour program that would keep the community informed about transformation, because because transformation is now underway. Yes, and is going to be underway for the next several years, and the impact on people who live and work in Area 1 is going to be very big indeed.
Absolutely. So, sir, is there anything else you wanted to add about the actually what's the word and how it all came about?
Well, I think one thing I could usefully do, depending on whether we have a minute or so, is to just remind those members of our audience who may not know, or remind them if they do, what we mean by transformation in Area 1. And simply put, what that's referring to, the whole focus of the What's the Word program, is the change that's happening because, under plans that have been in place for some time, the U.S. military here in this part of Korea, in Area 1, is scheduled gradually and by carefully orchestrated timetables to eventually move out of Area 1 and go south to a new home that's being prepared for it at Camp Humphreys in Pyeongtaek.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that great information, Mr.
Sure.
Fisher. You guys keep it locked right here. More great information coming from Mr. Frank Fisher from the Area 1 Public Affairs Office, and I'll get you your weather exchange rate and gas prices right after this quick break. Aloe Black with The Man on AFN Casey the Eagle, where we're serving America's best. I am Army Sergeant Crystal Crawford, and you're tuned in to the What's the Word Hour with our special guest, Mr. Frank Fisher from the Area 1 Public Affairs Office. And I still have in studio PFC Joe Alaman. He's here, and I'm going to toss it over to him so he can pick Mr. Fisher's brain a little bit more about this Area 1 transformation.
Yes, let's get going with that. I know you talked about the transformation earlier in the break, and you told us how it would make an impact in Area 1. So can you tell us a little bit about the impact that's going to have in Area 1? What kind of things can we expect, or the people can expect?
Sure. The impact is truly widespread. It's very wide-ranging, and it affects really either now or will affect just about every aspect of life in Area 1. Let me be specific. For example, as the timetable progresses, as the move toward the eventual departure of units proceeds, services, commissary, exchange, what you can buy in the commissary, what you can buy in the exchange could change.
Yeah.
There are things to consider about transportation, bus service, taxi service. Might these change? And if so, how will they change? The composition of Area 1 already, most of our listeners know that a change has been made to command sponsorship. Yep. So whereas Area 1 had for some time been mainly a duty station with soldiers who were permitted to be accompanied by their families, now it's a very different picture. And more and more and more, you'll be seeing soldiers who are here unaccompanied by their families. And so that will affect certain things. What about recreation and sports? What about resiliency? If you have a primarily active duty, unaccompanied population here, mainly, what does that mean you need to do to further sustain them and contribute to their resilience?
True.
Does it mean more boss activity? Does it mean more sports of various kinds, more recreational services and programs? These are all things that are being carefully managed by the leadership, the senior leadership in Area 1. But those are some examples of the kinds of things that either are changing or could change.
Yeah, and it sounds like that, like almost everything will be impacted, of course, by it. So definitely soldiers and families alike should also be preparing for that sort of thing. So,
That's right. That's right.
The next question I was going to ask you: why did we make a radio program about the transformation?
Well, for the very reason, that is a good question, thank you. And it's for the very reason that it does have this kind of broad impact across the spectrum of the community population. It affects soldiers, it affects units, it affects family members, it affects civilians. And so people very naturally have questions. They want to know what services will be available as this progresses, what will the quality of life be like here in Area 1 as this progresses. And so the What's the Word radio broadcast, which airs every other Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m., is designed to give them that kind of information, to give them that detail, and to give it to them to give them the benefit of hearing it from the inside experts. I'll give you an example. Recently we had a program, it was, I think, our second broadcast, and it was devoted to talking about how the transformation of Area 1 would affect recreational services, including things like places you can eat on post, where can you get a hamburger, where can you get something to go with it, bowling, theaters, libraries, that kind of thing. Things that are under the umbrella of the Directorate of Family and Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. So we had on the program the director of FMWR, Mr. Jamie Hawkins, and we had the chief of the Area 1 Army Community Service, ACS, Mr. Jack Ferguson. And so that's just one quick example of how the program brings on the air, live, these inside experts who can tell the community members the kinds of things that they need to know.
Yeah, and it's good to have different aspects of information coming from all angles. That way everyone is up to date and knows what's going on. And I thought when you brought the idea to us here, I thought it was a great idea, a great way to get that information out. So we thank you for that, and look forward to continuing that and continuing putting that information out to all the families and soldiers out there.
Great.
So, back to you, Sergeant Crawford. We'll stay tuned for more from us, of course.
Yes.
Absolutely, guys. We're going to get you right back into the music, but first, here's your Casey update. Alicia Keys with Teenage Love Affair right here on AFN Casey the Eagle, where we're serving America's best. I am Army Sergeant Crystal Crawford. The time is now 3:47, and we're still in studio with PFC Joe Alaman, and he's still asking the questions that need to be answered of Mr. Frank Fisher from the Area 1 Public Affairs Office. So what do we have next, Joe?
Well, we're going to pick the brain of Mr. Frank Fisher again and ask him about, what's the word and the transformation. So, what's the words about the transformation, obviously. And we would like to know who is the intended audience of this show.
Sure.
Who are we trying to reach out?
You bet. The intended audience of the What's the Word Transformation Radio Show. What's the Word, of course, is the title, and it's the meaning is obvious. Hey, as in, hey, what's the word? What's the latest? Tell me. Is the soldier, the civilian, the family member, the retiree, Mr. and Mrs. Area 1, whoever's in Area 1, who's ever part of this community, that's who we want to serve with this information.
Definitely. Awesome. And we covered many topics so far since we've started the show. What is this, our fourth show?
This is the fourth broadcast.
This is our fourth
today,
broadcast,
right.
and we've covered several topics. What are some of the topics we've already covered?
Well, the first topic, when the show premiered, was an overview of transformation, and the guests were the commander of U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud in Area 1, Colonel Jack Hafner, and the Garrison senior enlisted leader, Command Sergeant Major Patrick M. Quirk. So they were the guests on the debut broadcast, and they gave the audience a picture of what transformation means, what it is, and what the major aspects of it are or are going to be. The next broadcast was on, it was a look at what kinds of recreational services, this is something I mentioned in an earlier segment today, excuse me, what kind of recreational services would be available even as transformation proceeds. And the guests were the director of FMWR, Mr. Jamie Hawkins, and the chief of Army Community Service, Mr. Jack Ferguson. And we also had a program on out-processing. The 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, part of the 2nd Infantry Division, is, as many in our community know, going to inactivate this summer. And that means that there will be a large body of soldiers who will be PCSing, and they'll have to clear, of course, first. And so the Area 1 Transformation Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Coleman, and the Area 1 Director of Human Resources, Mr. Bud Rader, were the guests on that broadcast. And they gave people, kind of walked people through what that clearing process would be and what special system has been put together to make it go smoothly. So that's what we've had on the air so far.
Cool. And I know we got a few more to go, plenty to talk about.
Yes.
And tell us some of the topics we will be covering in the next weeks to come.
Sure. In the weeks and months to come, we expect to cover things like, for example, and not necessarily in this order, but healthcare. How will transformation affect health services to people in Area 1? What about resilience, as we have an increasingly unaccompanied population? What will be in place to contribute to the resilience of soldiers and the other members of the community? What about sports and recreation? What about the BOSS program? What about bus and taxi service in Area 1? How will that be affected by all of this? And something that's on the minds of a lot of people, from what I hear, is what will happen to commissary services. What about the AFES exchanges? Will those services be adjusted in any way, and how will that actually affect the community member who wants to go into the commissary or the exchange to look for a product or something like that?
Like some sweets. I like sweets. And I always go, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's great, and I'm glad that we're covering all those topics, because those are need-to-know things, and we are definitely going to be doing that every other Thursday.
That's right.
So stay tuned for more of that. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking with us about the show and what people should expect.
Very glad you